When we were in Nicaragua, we happened across a website that was an intentional community by investment website that was based here in Paraguay. We reached out and had a chat to the people that were running the community and sussed out whether it might be something that we might be interested in. We looked at intentional communities more broadly, and with that we came up with some interesting perspectives and maybe insights into the pros and cons of intentional communities. Intentional communities in Paraguay are nothing new. They've been around for hundreds of years. The Mennonites, for example, are a Christian community. They've been around for years and they're thriving. But in this particular instance, I'm talking about intentional communities by investment. So it's a different deal. You're putting your hard-earned money into a community. So with that in mind, you really need to think very carefully about what you're doing. When looking at any purchase of any property, whether it be investing in an intentional community or buying your own land, you obviously have to do your due diligence and ask, where is this land? Is it somewhere that I'd want to live? Does it have essential services, water and electricity if you're not going to be off grid? Is it down a dirt road, struggle to get down in the winter? Is it flood prone? Does it have the potential for agricultural sprays from nearby agricultural practices that might contaminate your land? Would the local community be welcoming to an intentional community? You need to look at the fine detail and do your due diligence. Who are the people that you're thinking about investing with? What are their track record? Have they had an intentional community before? If so, how did it work out? Are there other people that are thinking about investing or have invested in the intentional community? What happens if you don't want to be part of the community anymore? Can you get your money back? What happens if you pass on? Can you bequeath your share to another person? How are the rules or the principles of the community made? Are there rules? Who sets the rules? How are they enforced? What happens if someone doesn't abide by them? What happens if you want to have a dog or a cat? Are you allowed to? Is that against the rules? But it goes a step further. If you're talking about an intentional community that is being offered on the basis that it's going to turn some sort of income for you, the intentional community will do something or grow something that will be an income hopefully to you, and you're investing in that. Now you're talking about a business, not only a business but a business with strangers. So you've got to ask, where's the business plan? What's the viability of this business plan? Is the location of the land suitable for that business? It might be a great business idea, but if it's in an area that can't readily service the rest of the country, is it going to be viable? What is your requirement in terms of input? Do you have to put a certain amount of hours in a day, or how does it work? What happens if someone else doesn't put in as much time and effort as you? How are the profits dispersed? What happens if there's losses? Who's liable for that? So many questions that need to be asked about any business. But now, you're not only in a business, you're living with the people that you're in business with. So it's big, and it's something that, for us personally, after looking at all the pros and cons, we concluded that intentional communities aren't for us. It's not to say that we don't value the concept of communities, and if you can create a community around you, all the much better. But there are ways of creating communities without having to actually invest your money into a situation that who knows whether you can get your money out. We've been living in Paraguay for only a handful of months, but in that time we've been here, we've already have a community. We've got some good friends here, some solid contacts, and over time, I know for certain that we will have a really strong community. They won't be living right next to us, but they'll be in proximity, and we'll be able to call upon them for all sorts of things, and hopefully we'll be able to reciprocate. But there are other ways of creating a form of an intentional community without having to necessarily invest in an intentional community by investment. And what I'm talking about is there's always the option of finding a group of like-minded people and finding a parcel of land that is suitable and buying that land collectively and then dividing it up. And there's a number of real advantages and benefits of doing it that way. Here in Paraguay, particularly in the area we are, there's been a tendency for smaller sections of land, say 1 to 3 hectares, to be purchased by developers or investors and cut up smaller sections than what most people would be prepared to live on. So what that's resulted in is that there's a real shortage of the size of land that most people would like to live on here in Paraguay. For us, for example, we would like to find a parcel of land that's somewhere in the vicinity of maybe 1 to 3 hectares at the most. It's important not to have too much land, because the more land you have, the more you have to maintain, and there's certain things about the security of livestock here in Paraguay that you need to be mindful of. Essentially, You don't want to have your cows sitting way down in the back paddock where you can't see them. So our intention is to be very compact in our property and to really care for that intensively and grow heaps because you can. This is a great climate to grow in. So there's no need for us and most other people to have more than, say, a hectare or two. But the other real advantage of buying a bigger parcel of land with others is that you get a really significant purchasing advantage. You can buy 10 hectares cheaper per hectare than what you'd get 1 hectare. If you buy 10 hectares and you cut it up, you will have paid a lot less. So it makes sense to think about maybe looking for a bigger parcel of land. There's also more parcels of bigger land in the 8 to 10 and more hectares. So you're going to be more likely to find a parcel of land that's in an area to your liking. You also have the advantage that if you need to connect services, electricity in particular, or water, that you're spreading the cost of that connection to the actual zone with those others, rather than buying 1 hectare in the middle of nowhere and shouldering all those costs. The other advantage of buying as a community, as a group, is that you're creating your community, essentially. You know these people, hopefully they're on the same wavelength. So you've had an opportunity to some extent vet the other people that you'll be living around. So you've essentially created a small community around you, but you haven't had to go down the track of investing collectively to the extent where if things don't work out or you tend not to get on with that person like you thought you would, there's no drama here. You own your bit of land, they own their bit of land. So there's no damage done. So there's things to think about when you are thinking about buying a property or investing in a intentional community. But whatever you do, whichever way you do progress, as I've said in a previous video, the most important thing is just take your time. There's no need to rush. There's plenty of properties here. It's a buyer's market, and you will inevitably find that it's difficult to find what you're looking for straight off the cuff. This is an unregulated market. There's not a lot of agents that are really onto it, so you really got to do some hard manual digging. You've got to contact a lot of advertisements that turn out that land's not for sale. You've got to check a lot of things out, so it takes time. You'll find your dream property, but it does take time. So I would recommend that you just settle into the reality that the best situation is to come, rent. Rent is cheap here, so you can rent and just get a feel for the place. But more importantly, when you come and rent, you're not only getting a feel for the area and the land that you might be thinking about purchasing or the area that you're thinking about purchasing, but more importantly, you're meeting people that have either purchased in that area, have got land in that area, did have land in that area, invested it in an intentional community. And it will be those contacts, that information is the real goal that will ensure that you've got the best information to make the best decision. That's really the cherry on top. And it would be foolish to forgo that, because for the sake of, say, 6 months rent or 12 months rent, whatever it takes, it's really nothing when you take into account what you will most likely save by being prudent about your inquiries and about your offers. But you'll also give yourself the benefit of just all that information, all that data, all that feeling that you have about, you can only have when you actually go and visit. There's no substitute, so there's no need to rush. Just make sure that the decision you make is made purposefully, intentionally, and take your time. With all that, you're going to make the right decision.